Hi, this is Sally, and today my project is this beautiful dress. My friend has asked me if I can put a zip into the front because she has recently had a baby. It's sealed here. I will see how I can get this done and still have it look as pretty as it already does. So let's get on with it. As I look at this, I've got that pretty trim there. I have to keep that. And on the underside, I'm lucky enough to have a seam. So I'm going to undo the seam this side and that side, but I will leave the neck trim in place for now. That'll be the last thing I take out. Now this is when I wish I had really good eyesight. See if I can tease one of these stitches out without doing any damage to the cotton underneath, because the cotton is quite fine. I don't want to rip it or snare it or anything else. That looks like a thread. I'm going to clip that and then pull it apart down towards the waist. Once I've got the stitches moving, I'll be able to see what it is I'm doing. So having undone the inside seam, I'm looking here. This is not boding very well because you can see the edge of this, which is where I want to put the zip, has nothing there. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about that. I'm still gonna have to undo it. I'm hoping that everything's attached to this side. I'll find out in a minute. I can see that that has been cut back. See if I can tease some of these threads out. My stomach's already turning with the nerves. I think that's a thread that I've managed to pull. This won't be the first job that's surprised me, and I've had to really think about what it is I'm doing. I seem to get those kind of jobs. I think this is going to take a little bit of teasing to find the right place to pull this. Now, because it's a little bit awkward to grab hold of those threads, put my needle through, and now I'm just going to cut the thread as it goes up around the needle like that. Didn't seem to work. There's not enough leeway between the two, so I'm going to have to do that a couple of times, I think. I've just got to be really careful because I don't really want to risk ruining anything. There's no way I'm going to get a trim like the one that's across the front that looks like buttons. Once I've got it started, it'll be fine. They are deep in there, these threads. Now, I am a little bit wary about undoing it from the underside because these bubbles are going to come out. I tried to put a thread through, but these are rock hard, won't go through. And even lower down, they don't want to go through where they've been tied. I'm going to have to think about this. I really need to separate both sides. I don't want any of those coming undone. So I think what I'm going to do is sew through these so that they won't go anywhere. The only trouble is where these ones are a little bit too close, I'll have to just hope that I get enough thread into them so they do not come apart. Where I have started to take these apart, I'm going to start sewing here and go along the way I'm taking them out. I'm going to go through here. I'm hoping this works because really and truly I've not done something this elaborate in a very long time. And all that thread through. Because they're laid on top of each other, I need to go back and forward to get all of them nicely into place, so they don't all fall out. And I need them in the same order, but I do need them to look even on the other side, and I think this is the only way I can do it. Then I'll make my way up as I undo everything. I think that will hold it enough that I can sew something onto it to stabilize it and then put the zip on as well. There we go. It's always thinking outside of a box on some projects. I'll make my way to the next set. But this is getting so close, and I'm going to have to hope that I've got just enough trim to make this work. It really is hit and miss with some things. You really don't know what you've got until you start messing with it. In fact, I'll pre-sew that. I'll undo these couple very carefully, just the stitches from the top. And now I'll sew this little bobble to the back too. I'll put a couple of small stitches in just to make sure that does not move. So I'm actually coming quite close to where the ties are for those bobbles. And then I'll undo the next one and sew that one also into place and secure that too, because they've got to be even on the front. I've got to the top where I think I've got just a couple more, and I'm not going to be able to do that the same way because of the trim. I'm going to have to backstitch those three together so that they hold. Not sure how I'm going to put all of this together. I'm sure I will be inspired shortly as to how it's done. I just got to think about it. Let's get that last green stitch out of there. Oh no, I've got another one. It's the project that keeps on giving. Got right to the top. I'm going to backstitch this one into place, and then I'm just going to stitch these ones together so that they hold and I can pull them away from the gold trim on the front. Unfortunately, the last bubble is sewn into the top, so I'm going to have to take all of this apart. I'm going to do it to about 2 inches either side of this join. I'm losing my stitches here. It's a very fine fabric and I don't want to mess it up. The other thing I need to do is, this is the underskirt, the outer skirt, and then the top has been brought down into here. I'm going to undo both sides of the skirt and the top skirt so I can put the zip all the way down and hide it without having to worry too much. Probably 1 inch either side, so I've got enough room to get access there. Having undone both sides, if I lay that one on top of the other, even at the bottom, I am about 1/4 of an inch too short on top. So that was to be expected. It's being caught up against all of this. I have just cut a length of this ribbon. It's 14 inches. I only need 12 inches for the front of the dress. I'm going to put a little hem on it like that, both ends, so that it doesn't unravel as I'm working on it. I've put a piece of tape here because I'm going to have to put this piece of tape underneath like that. I'm going to put it quite close to the top. Just hold on to that for the moment. My main problem with this dress is that it's been cut so far back against the side here that I can't put the zip on where I would like it to go on, which obviously would be along that folded line. So I have to extend out slightly to make sure that I have what I need to hide it. I'm going to determine how far across I want that to go. Put the pin in at right angles so it can't move. Slide that underneath the foot. Line up the side there, push the top of that underneath it, but I'm going to start a little ways forward so I can reverse over it. That should keep it in place. Now I'm going to be trying to follow the original sew line, which is a little bit awkward because it's not very clear. I'm going to sew forward a couple of stitches like that so I can take my pin out, and then I'm going to reverse. Hopefully the neckline will go into place. It's where I want it. And now on down. Keeping everything in line is going to be a little bit awkward, so I'm going to use that. And then on down. I'll pull out any remains of stitches that I don't need. And I'm going to go all the way down to the end of the front of this dress. It's awkward because I'm trying to keep an eye on this line and this line at the same time. Now that the seam here is a little bit wider, it's a little bit easier. There we go. It's only a little bit, it's not even a proper trim, but it just holds all of that in place. I now need to finish this trim up so I can tuck that in. I'm going to just take that back about 1/4 of an inch so it'll be easier to deal with. Because it's such a small piece, fold all of that back like that. Slip the ribbon underneath like that and slide that into place. It's a little bit awkward. Position everything. The piping is about halfway across my trim there. Pop that down. I'm going to just sew a few stitches forward. Let's see how that does. I just wanted it to hold. It's a little bit intricate really, but I've got to get all parts working, otherwise it's not going to work at all. I've secured that across there, fold that over so it's nice and tight. Because I've sewn it, I've got a little bit of leverage there. See if I can get all of that back under that foot. I'm going to just sew to the end. See how that works. Perfect. And then I'm going to trim that back. I think if I leave it about 1/2 an inch, that should be fine. Put a pin in there and on down. You see there's that little bit of gold there. I think that would be fine. I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. There was no other fabric that I could put there, so to use the ribbon up for other parts will work out perfectly. Pull all of that down so it goes in nice and evenly. I've lined up the zip, the ribbon, and the side of the dress, and I'm just sewing as close as I can, but without the ribbon going where the zip will be going. The whole idea is that I catch all of this down and the stitches shouldn't rip out, especially where the fabric is very thin, and I want to make sure that it stays secure. I'll check that it all works before I put the other side in. Who knew this could be so interesting? I'm going to take it all the way to the top because I can cut it back if necessary. It just takes a little minute to get there. I'll move the slide down so it doesn't interfere with anything. There we go. Now I know that I'm going to find it very hard to sew through all of this with my sewing machine, so I am going to set it up that I'm going to have a ribbon here on the other side of the zip. I think the best thing is to sew the ribbon on first I'll have to do it on the opposite side, which won't matter because the foot will still clear the teeth. Let's see how this goes. There's a little bit of the blue trim on the outside. I want that there. So I'm going to go a few stitches back and then forward. The ribbon wants to walk, which is a bit annoying. I think I've got it where I want it. I'm going to go all the way to the top. And as I did on the other side, I can put needle down like that, pick the foot up, run this zipper all the way back so it doesn't interfere with anything. There we go. And finish at the top here. I'm going to cut the side of this zip down so I don't catch too much of that. Let me undo that so that it doesn't catch in there. Line all of that up. I'm just going to sew until midway across this ribbon here. And then back. I'll take some of this out of here. There, down, and that can go down too. Not brilliant, but not bad. Considering I'm trying to make something work that wasn't designed for this. So I'm going to follow quite a bit more of the neckline than I was going to. I'm going to take it back here because then I can work out where my stitches go. Line my sew line up with the top of the trim and sew into there. Push that up so all the fluffy stuff goes up. Now that fluffy stuff doesn't want to go up, so I'm going to have to force it to go up. Hopefully that's caught it. To the end and then reverse. I cut back to the stitch line that was originally there, fold that down to the stitch line that I've just put in, like that, pin that into place so everything's nice and flat. I'll have to maneuver the top end in. Now the lining's quite a loose weave, so it wriggles a little bit. For a start, I'll remove those. I don't want to risk those coming through to the front. It can be folded back like that. That can be folded over like that. It's a little bit untidy, but it'll be fine. I'll work it in and then work all of this in as well so it's nice and professional looking. I can actually bring that down a little bit to the bottom. It's not very loose, just a little bit. There we go. I think that will work. Now I always prefer to have my hem away from me, so I'm going to move that pin here and I'm going to do a couple of running stitches because it really doesn't matter. You can see where the skirt comes. I'll start off with a couple of stitches there. I'm going to go up into the fold of the fabric like that and rolling that hem in like that. I'm going to go across into the zipper. I'm not going to go very deep. I'm just going to pick up a couple of little stitches through the weave so it doesn't even show on the other side, across and into the fold of the fabric like that. They're less than 1/4 of an inch long and I'm trying to get into the original stitch line so that it doesn't really show anywhere. And then again, and then I'll pull those through like that so they're invisible. Can't see them that side, and if they do come through they'll be under there so nobody will see them. I'm going to work my way all the way to the top where I can mess around with the top corner there where it's a little bit uneven. By holding everything down into place, I should be able to keep everything nice and neat. I only do 3 or 4 at the most, sets of stitches. 1 on each side is a set and then pull it through. Otherwise there's too much friction and you'll break your thread. What I have is the top coming in and down. It looks a little bit choppy, but it's going to be fine. And that's what it looks like on the inside. I now have to work out how to do this top corner. You can see that it gets cut quite close to the trim again. This trim comes in and that one comes up. I think what I'm going to do is cut that back just 1/8 on the top side of the fold so that it butts up nicely. You can still see where it kind of wants to fold back, but I think that will work. Like I did before, I'm going to sew the neck part of the trim halfway across the new trim, and then I'm going to butt that up next to it as I go across so it forms one single width. It's going to be a little bit tricky. I think we can do that. Okay, so I've lined that to be halfway along. See if I can get that to slide under nicely. That's what I've been finding is the gold gets caught up, and I don't have to have it terribly close to where I want it to be sewn to. Just need it to be on there. I don't have very much room, so I'm going to unstitch across the back so that I have enough room to bring this around. It really hasn't given me very much room to work with, but I think if I hold that there and that down there and just sew across, it should be okay. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to sew a little bit lower so that doesn't happen again, because I need that in really tight. That's why I'm doing it this way round. Let me undo this and have a look, see whether I can do it a different way. I'm going to put this up here, so I'm coming into that join again, and I'm going to bring that up and pop this side under, so I've got both sides under, and I'm going to bring the top over all of it, because I think, although I've only got one side pulled in, if I can get the other one to be just tightly held in, it might work. It's butted up, so it's not going anywhere this time. The trouble is there's quite a bit of weight wanting to go the other way. I might have to undo it and do it again. Sometimes things take 2 or 3 goes, but we'll see. Oh no, it feels tight in there. That's good. Yeah, it feels like it's right in there. So basically that will now come round that corner and look like it was meant to be there. If I can get this to fit under there, I think I'm going to have to, I don't want to undo those. Oh. Where to go, what to do, how to do it. I'm going to hold that out so it's flat, and I'm going to put a pin in it just to hold it so it's not moving anywhere. I'm going to sew across here to the top. I'm actually having to do it upside down, which is a little bit infuriating because I don't have as much space to play with, especially with those bubbles on the back side there. So anyway, let's see what I can do. It's in place, move that and do 1, 2, 3. So I've got 4 stitches. Pick that up. I'm going to cut the gold trim to the needle. I don't want to go over the needle because otherwise there's going to be problems. Turn everything into place. Everything out of the way. I'm going to sew the gold trim into place following the existing stitches. I'll go as far as I can, which is up here. Let's see how that's gone in. I think that will work. It will work when it comes back the other way because there's not enough stitching on here to hold it in place to go around that corner. But what I will do is trim back this gold here because that doesn't have to be so much there now. I've actually decided to sew it back the other way so it's held into place a little bit better. Bring that on here. I'm going to do a couple of little nicks just into the gold, not too far. So hopefully that will round as it goes round. I'm hoping that works because there's really nothing for me to hold on to. The dress isn't there, and I should be able to straighten that and come into where those bobbles are. Maybe not. There we go. And then reverse. It's not perfect, but it does hold. I don't have any frays going on, so I just need to sew the inside of the back into place. I'm just putting that neckline underneath like that. Get everything out of the way. I know where my sew line is for the neck. Pull that into position and sew it as close as I can to that trim without pulling the neckline. I'm trying to keep it in position rather than pull it round. It'll take a little minute to get there, I think. A zipper foot works well, but it's not really designed for this part of the job that I'm trying to do. I think I can take it to the corner and then I'll reverse and hope I've got it in the right place. If not, I can hand stitch and finish it off. And that looks pretty good. This comes round and that goes underneath. So now I have to get the zip in. That's going to be an interesting prospect. Undo this pin. I had to put that in to hold that in place. Bring that up. Let me work this out. In order to stop this side of the interior bodice shredding any more than needs to be, I've just pinned it under and out of the way. Let's see where all of this is going to go. I've sewn that side of the zip to the gold. All I have to do is sew the gold to the front and make sure all of these little bubbles stay firm and in place. My sewing machine, I don't think is going to go over that. So that's the top there. That's the top there. That won't look so good if that shows. I might have to think of something to put across here to hide the top there. I will deal with that when I need to. I think that's going to be okay. That's the top of the zip here. So I'm going to undo to that point. I think I've worked out where I want the top to be. It's a little bit difficult because there is that little bit of a gap. If I fold that back and pin that onto here, I'll use the pin that's already there like that, so it can't move up or down. Then pulling the dress out like this, to the bottom like that. I already have the bottom pinned in, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to pin the front of this trim onto here so it can't move. What I've done here is I've pinned across where the skirt goes, and I think that's where I need it. I'm going to pop it through here and only into the gold and back out. So now what I've got is the length that gold ribbon has to be sewn through to the other side, which means I can pin that into place all the way down. Now I've got to decide how best to sew that so it stays nice and tight against those bubbles so they don't move. First thing I'm going to do is I am going to cut this piece of gold trim to the top of the neckline, about there. Fold that down so it is below the neckline, as if I had sewn it into the top there. Shouldn't have any problem with it coming to pieces. I'm going to remove this pin because that's hindering what I want to do. Pull that up and maybe just a wee tad further down, and I am going to come up through here, push my threads behind through to the front, avoiding the green fabric. I'm going to come right back down next to my stitch, holding that out of the way, and through that trim so it holds everything in place. This bubble here is the end one. I am going to go back through to the front, avoiding the green fabric. I've got a double thread. I'm doing it like a stitch in the ditch on the front. I am putting a stitch in about 1/8 of an inch away from where it came through, all the way to the back and straight. It's a little bit awkward because there's quite a bit of fabric that I'm going through, all the way through to the back. It comes out along the upper edge of the ribbon there. Pull that through, make sure that my threads don't tangle, and then I go about 1/8 of an inch straight through to the front, and it has to come out between those two fabrics there. It's a really difficult one to do, but I want it to look like it's been machine sewn in, so I have to be very careful. Not only that, by getting 2 or 3 little stitches into these bubbles, they'll stay straight, and I have secured them on the underside into each other, but even so I just want to make sure that they are doing what they're meant to be doing. I've managed to sew all the way down there and got to the end. I'm going to just carry on with that little running stitch all the way to the end of the trim on the dress front. So I'm in where the skirt's going to be, and I'm going to just pull that across here and cast off, so it's 2 or 3 stitches on top of each other. Now I have a zip that is sewn in. Let's see how that looks from the front. That doesn't look too bad at all. So the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to lay all this flat, move all of this around so that it's all hidden. That will be put into there, and then this comes down over the top and hides it. Before I had a sewing line that was about halfway across here. I'm just going to have to imagine where my sew line is so that I have it nice and even all the way down. So I'll work that piece in all the way to the bottom. Now on the other side I was able to cut it back to the sew line, but on this side the original sew line down the centre front is my sew line for this part of the project. Now I've overstitched along here just to keep everything in place, and now I'm going to change the stitch to my little ladder stitch that I rather like. I'm going to go through here along, so I'm going all the way through the zip and into the gold fabric underneath so that it's nice and tightly held into place, because I feel that although it is held into place, it's a little bit too far back and I don't want everything twisting. If it's wrong I can always take it out and do it again, but I think if it's far enough back from the teeth like this it'll be fine. Before I go too far I will try it and see if I can get to the top without messing anything up. Always try things. Just because you think it's going to work doesn't mean it necessarily will. Yeah, it will. It clears it. There's enough clearance for it not to be a problem. Good. That means that the gold fabric, the zip and everything in between should be kept into place. I'm going to do that all the way down, just that. I've kind of eyeballed where I want it to go. I think I'm going to pin this because I don't really want it moving, and I'm going to be doing all of the layers at the same time. Pin all of that there and pop it so I can follow the seam that was already in here. I will reverse over over I go. Remove that pin. This is arced, so I don't want it to be too straight, I want it to be rounded. Straighten the next little section out and work my way into there, and then reverse. I have gone over the stitches that were originally in there. Now I don't want all of this fluff here, so I'm going to cut back along here so it's in a straight line like that. I know that the ribbon will fray. Pop this over like this. Along the front here I am just going to put number 5, a little bit short but very wide, just across the front so that nothing can fray or get undone. And let's see what it looks like on the front. Now I've done the zip up. I do worry about the top. I'm going to have to think about what to do to hide that. Apart from that, it's very functional. Goes all the way down to the bottom. Doesn't get caught on anything, which is the main thing. The other thing my friend asked me to do was to sew the scarf onto the shoulder. I folded the scarf into 2 and then over so it's in quarters. That is the center line, which I am going to line up with this shoulder piece here. Pop that on there. I am sure she doesn't want the stitching showing through, so I'm going to pull that back like this and just leave the lower 2 pieces in place. I'm going to take this back almost to the neckline, maybe 1/4 of an inch out, so that if it does flop it doesn't look so bad. And I am going to slip all of that under here in a straight line. Pick that foot up and start sliding it underneath. I'm going to make sure that that is as flat as I can make it. Make sure the bodice itself is in a straight line. Lower the foot. I can see the stitch line here underneath, and that's what I'm going to follow. Make sure that's in the center. Having lined it up, I'm going to go forward and back, and then forward all the way across to about 1/2 inch. Just before the sleeve line, reverse, and let's see what this looks like. Cut back all the threads so they don't show, and on the back. I took it a little bit closer to the neckline, so if it does move, it's not going to move very far. I've followed the shoulder line on the outside, and the shoulder line on the inside a little bit different, but that's okay. And when she wears that, it's always in place. Even if it pulls forward, it'll be fine. I think I'll just go acrossways so that that is not the main point, because what I can see happening is that that would tear here. I'm just going to go either side to give it a little bit more strength. See, this is me overthinking things again. And only on the neckline, line that up. It's about 1/4 of an inch either side that I'm going to take it, so it doesn't make any difference to the actual scarf. And then back. That's all I'm going to do. That's better. So if it does move forward, all the stress isn't on there. There's a little bit either side for it to be pulling against too. I refolded this into its 4, and I've taken the back side of the fold on both the front and the back and pinned them together. She wanted them sewn about 1 inch below her waistline, so I'm going to hold that like that, tip that over like that, and then secure it by pinning that there. I put the back part of the scarf towards the back and then the front over the top like that. If I straighten out the skirt and the underskirt, I've managed to get the seams together, so that's the underskirt, here's the top skirt, to here, and I'm going to pop the gold trim on top of each other underneath here so that I am able to sew in a straight line across the 2, then back and then forward again. That should hold everything in place. This took a little bit of doing. I sewed across the front and then across the back of a little bit of the gold trim, and when you hold the dress together like that, although it doesn't look perfect, it doesn't look as bitty as it did with the trim finishing there and the green going out and the green going out from the top of the zip. I think that will work. To put a hook and eye on there is going to be really difficult. I could have put a little bit more on here and taken the zip further over, but then you've got nowhere to attach the zip on this side very easily to carry the weight of the beading on the front. But I think she's going to be absolutely delighted. She needs it, I think, next week or the week after for a wedding. So, if you'd like to see more from me, please subscribe and hit the button, and a few thumbs up would be brilliant. And in the meantime, take care, see you later, ciao!